Our next speaker is going to talk about how to implement a carbon market in the United States. This is Lynate Pettengill, and she's the Director of Development for Citizens Climate Lobby, and I would love to have her join us right now.
So when I joined Citizens Climate Lobby in 2011, I was in a state of panic and desperation. I had been really worried about climate change for 5 years and was reading Dr. Jim Hansen's book, Storms of My Grandchildren. It's not the most uplifting read, to put it mildly. As Dr. Hansen detailed what would happen if we do not take action and our CO2 count continues to rise, I could feel my blood pressure rising in direct proportion. At the end of the book, however, he offered what he feels is the most effective solution to this grave threat: carbon fee and dividend legislation, where a steadily rising fee is placed on carbon pollution and all the revenue is returned to U.S. households on an equal basis. A glimmer of hope. I jumped on the internet to learn more and was impressed by the simplicity and common sense of the fee and dividend, which I'll tell you about more in a minute. In my research, I also found Citizens Climate Lobby, a nonprofit organization working to pass fee and dividend legislation. 4 years ago, it had only a handful of committed visionary volunteers. I thought to myself, this is completely impossible. How could this ragtag group of people ever manage to pass national legislation? But I couldn't quit thinking of the effectiveness of carbon fee and dividend. And Citizens Climate Lobby was the only organization working on fee and dividend. The other challenge I faced at the time was I was a single mom and holding down 3 part-time jobs to provide for my son and me. I was exhausted, and I thought, even if I did think this was possible, how can I find the time to do this work? Then I thought of my son and all the other children in the world who will face a very bleak future if the world continues to avoid implementing effective climate legislation. My question quickly switched from how could I possibly volunteer to how can I not find the time to do this work? I decided, even if this seemed impossible, it was our best chance to effectively address climate change. From that point on, I channeled all of my fear, frustration, and anger into this work. It sure felt a lot better than sitting around worrying about climate change. And in the past 4 years, I have changed my mind about our prospects. I no longer feel that what we're doing is impossible. In fact, I think it's very likely we're going to get climate legislation, which includes a significant price on carbon, passed in the very near future. We're no longer a ragtag group of volunteers. We're growing quite rapidly, doubling or tripling in size every year. We now have over 18,000 members, up from 1,500 just 2 years ago, which is more than 1,000% increase in membership. Not all of these members are active, but most are to some degree, and many give of their time quite generously, some putting in well over 40 hours a week. CCL volunteers are tenacious and productive. We have quite a few of them here at the conference at our day. And because of our incredible volunteers, we've expanded into 426 out of 435 congressional districts. We hope to cover all districts by year end. In 2014, we had over 1,000 meetings with members of Congress and staffers, more than any other nonprofit organization by far. Last year, we published more than 2,200 letters to the editor and almost 300 full-length op-eds, reaching tens of millions of readers. I'm hopeful because of who I see showing up to do this work and what we get done. Okay, you all have your cell phones with you, right? Okay, great. Now I'm going to go over 3 of the main reasons why I think CCL's carbon fee and dividends solution is likely to be implemented. First off, it's a great solution, significantly reducing CO2 emissions and benefiting our economy. Secondly, we have significant interest from both Republicans and Democrats. And thirdly, carbon fee and dividend protects the poor. Okay, the first reason carbon fee and dividend legislation is likely to pass is because it's a great solution to climate change. To go into a little more detail, the fee is applied at one point only, and that's at the point of extraction. So as the coal or oil or gas is extracted from the ground, or when fossil fuel is imported into the country, that's when the fee is assessed, when the fossil fuel companies pay the fee, and then they're going to pass that on, that increased cost, to consumers. We're proposing that this fee be $15 per ton the first year and $10 additional ton, $10 a ton each subsequent year in addition. And to give you an idea of how this translates, $15 a ton would equate to a gallon of gas going up about 15 cents. And so then the next year it would be about a 25-cent increase. So it's not drastic, but it does send a clear, consistent market signal. All of the collected revenue is returned to U.S. households equally. For example, if you, me, and Oprah all had the same number of people in our household, we would all get the same amount in our monthly dividend check. It doesn't matter how much money we make, or how much money we spend, or how much energy we use. It's all dependent on the number in our household. This return of revenue protects consumers from increased costs, and it also incentivizes them to use less energy and purchase less carbon-intensive goods. So the lower your carbon footprint, the better off you'll be. Right now, as we've discussed quite a few times in the conference, fossil fuel prices are artificially low because of the externalities, the environmental, health, security, and other costs paid by society are not included at this time. If the federal government corrects this market failure and provides clear, long-term price signals that reflect the true cost of fossil fuels, consumers and businesses will quickly shift towards less carbon-intensive goods and energy sources. Our proposed fee and dividend solution also includes a border tariff and adjustment so that countries without similar legislation will have to pay a fee at the border. And U.S. companies exporting to these countries will receive an adjustment so that they're not placed at an unfair economic disadvantage. We've run the border adjustment by World Trade Organization legal experts, and they believe it would be compliant with existing trade agreements. What about cell phone reception? Y'all have a few bars left on your phone? Yeah? Okay. Now that we've talked about what's so great about the solution, the next reason I'm hopeful that we're going to pass legislation is that we enjoy serious interest from both Republicans and Democrats. Mostly, this is due to the fact that it's such an attractive solution to climate change. Carbon fee is a market-based solution, and it doesn't grow government, both important factors for conservatives. It's highly effective, reducing CO2 emissions by 33% in 10 years and 52% in 20 years. I'm going to repeat that. Reducing CO2 emissions by 33% in 10 years and 52% in 20 years. That is worth some applause. I mean, that's pretty significant. I'm going to applaud that. Not only that, but it also benefits our economy. In 10 years, adding 2.1 million jobs and 70 to 85 billion to our GDP, both over baseline. So there are many reasons for members of Congress to support fee and dividend legislation. We also have support from both parties due to some extent to our methodology. We are not the angry organization showing up at their offices in a confrontational manner. Rather, a hallmark of CCL is that we only meet with elected officials with respect and gratitude. We have many Democrats who are willing to introduce our legislation right now, but this is a bipartisan issue. We realize that to succeed, we need both sides of the aisle supporting this solution. The good news is we have several Republicans interested in taking substantive steps in this process, and we're going to have some significant positive developments soon. All right, everyone have a charge left on your cell phone? Yeah? Awesome, awesome. So we've discussed the serious interests we have from both Republicans and Democrats. The third reason I'm hopeful that carbon fee and dividend legislation will be implemented is because it protects the poor, a concern shared by many voters and members of Congress. Under carbon fee and dividend, 2/3 of households will either break even or receive more back in their monthly dividend check than they'll have to pay for the increased cost of energy and consumer goods. The poor will definitely fall in this 2/3 of households. I can also share anecdotally about how this legislation would affect the poor, having spent several years in this economic sector myself. When my son, Ethan, was 2, his father and I divorced, and because of the changes in our lives, it meant that Ethan would have to go from 20 hours a week in daycare, which I already didn't like, to 55 hours a week, a change I simply could not accept. To keep his daycare hours to a minimum, I left my well-paying full-time job with benefits for part-time contract work and immediately joined the ranks of the working poor. My son and I lived off $15,000 a year and qualified for WIC assistance. I swallowed my pride each time I went to the grocery store and paid for cheese, juice, and other essentials with my WIC coupons. I still remember my cheeks burning as the cashier crossed through the UPC symbols with a red marker, just in case I was tempted to return the food and use the money instead for something else, like drugs. Now, if this legislation had passed during my lean years, I actually would have been better off. To make ends meet on $15,000, I was keeping my thermostat very low in the winter and quite high in the summer. I was also buying far fewer essentials than most people. 5 years after the implementation of fee and dividend, a single mom in my situation would have received $1,200 annually. In 10 years, the annual payout would have been $1,800. What would I have done with the extra cash? I would have bought fresh fruits and vegetables, which are more expensive than processed foods. I would have taken care of minor health challenges, which I had avoided due to lack of money. And I would have put aside money each month in savings. Now, the RIMI study, which analyzed our carbon fee and dividend solution, shows that not only will the poor respond in a way similar to what I just described, but the middle and upper economic classes will do the same. And that extra pocket money ends up having a stimulative effect on the economy. So I've shared with you 3 of the many reasons I believe that carbon fee and dividend is going to be implemented. 1, it's a great solution, significantly reducing CO2 emissions and benefiting our economy. 2, we have serious interests from both Republicans and Democrats. And 3, carbon fee and dividend protects the poor. For these 3 reasons and many more, I do believe we're going to pass national carbon fee and dividend legislation. So now it's time to take out those well-charged phones of yours, and I want to ask you to go to citizensclimatelobby.org. So take out your phones right now, citizensclimatelobby.org. And at the top of the page, you're going to see a little red button. It says Join CCL. I want you to hit that. There's no cost, there's no obligation. All you're going to do is receive information from us. That way, you'll be the first to know when we have awesome, positive developments to announce. It's going to be exciting. So I'm going to leave you now with this quotation from Margaret Mead. "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. Let's go change the world." Thank you.